All right, guys, how's it going today? So today we're going to go over how to draw trend lines like a trading pro. So first, I just want to break down, some notes I made, some little bullet points for you guys. So let's start with the top here. So why is drawing trend lines important, right? So number one, it helps you identify the overall trend, right? Are we in an uptrend? Are we in a downtrend, right? Now, usually if we're in an uptrend, they say the trend is your friend. Trade with the trend, right? So you want to be buying the dips, right? If we're in a downtrend, you want to be selling the rips, right? Every time it pops up, look for a short entry, right? It's pretty simple. So, drawing trend lines also helps you better time your entries and exits, right? So, and I'll show you what I'm talking about on the charts here in a minute, right? So, if you enter right at a trend line, you are automatically improving your risk to reward ratio, right? You don't want to just enter long in no man's land and then price pulls back down to a lower point where you should have entered at support or a moving average or a trend line, okay? So, I like to think of the trend lines as an area of value, right? And you're trying to enter at the best deal, right? It's just like like you're shopping, right? You got these pair of sneakers that you want, but they're like $150 at this one store. But why pay $150 at the one store when you can get them for $100 at the other store, right? We're shopping for deals, right? That's what this is all about. So the best technique or approach. So I always want to start with a higher time frame. Okay, so I always look at the weekly and daily charts, and you want to take a top down approach, right? Everything in TA with me is a top down approach, meaning I'm looking at the weekly, then I zoom into the daily, then the 4 hour, then the 1 hour, then the 15-minute, all the way down to the 3-minute when I'm doing my intraday scalping, right? And I use trend lines on, obviously the more important ones are the ones on the daily and the weekly, but I also use trend lines on an intraday basis as well, right? Because they can help you, on a day when we're trending down. It can provide you a signal for entering long. If it's trending down for the first 2 hours of the day and then it starts to break that down trend line, that's a trigger for you to go long, right? Or if it's trending up and it tests the trend line, that's another trigger for you to go long, okay? And like the next bullet says, you can zoom into smaller time frames and use on an intraday basis on 3-minute to 15-minute time frames, okay? So the ways to find how to draw these trend lines, it's pretty simple. I mean, they have to just really just in your face, just kind of pop out at you, right? So you want to find two major pivots in price, and then just draw a trend line connecting those 2 points, okay? And you want to try to get as many touches as possible, but you want at least 2 touches when you're drawing these trend lines, obviously, okay? And then I'm going to go over like 4 different scenarios, 4 different ways that I use trend lines or that you can use trend lines. It's knowing when to buy the dip, right? So, and then knowing when to sell the rip, and then knowing when to flip from bullish to bearish, and then knowing when to flip from bearish to bullish, okay? So I'm going to go over all that here in a second. So let's flip over to TradingView, and let's look at oil, because this is one that I was trading, and we actually entered a short position in our Discord group, right? So you can see here, right? Here's a pivot in price, right? It made a swing high and then rejected, and then it made another swing high and then it rejected. Okay, so right here, I have a trend line I can draw right here. And then when price entered it here back in October, I actually did take a short position here, and I played it back to the previous support, or the previous resistance, now support. And it obviously broke down below that, and then it's been coming back ever since. And then just here recently, it came up and tagged that same trend line again, and we took a short in our futures room, right? Also, we had a little added confluence here because the MACD was making lower highs while price up here was making higher highs, right? So that gave me extra confidence in my short position, and we actually entered at 92.5 and took most of it off at 90. In fact, I may actually re-enter here because I think we are going to test this breakout area and this former resistance, now support. So this probably is going to hit 85 here soon. So this is, one way. This is, like I said, knowing when to sell, right? So knowing when to short. So this is a good signal for shorts, right? When you have that upper trend line, right? This is a good signal for you to short. So let's look at the Nasdaq here. So this is one we can cover kind of multiple points here. So you have a pivot point here and then here, right? So from way back in November of 2020, we had a reference point multiple times from there. So we had another one here. So this was a good buy zone in May, right? Okay. And then another one here in October, right? And then I tried to buy it here, and this one failed, right? We got a little bit of a pop above it, and then it failed. Let's go down to the daily. Okay, so this one kind of coincides. Yes, you actually see it did dip below and then bounced up, and it actually bounced up to 16,000 after hitting a low of 15,152. So over an 800-point bounce from there, but then it started to come back below. And this is something I usually don't like to see. So number one, it dipped below it and then reclaimed it. That's good. But then after 2 days, it had this big bearish candle. I mean, look at this, 2.5% down, big red engulfing candle. And then it came down to test it again, and it actually dipped below it on January 14th and then got back above it. And then, I mean, this is already looking kind of shaky because the bounces are getting, shorter and shorter. And then the next day, big daily candle closed below it, another 2.5% down day. So this is that scenario I was talking about, know when to flip from bullish to bearish, right? So this daily closed below it, not good at all. And you see what happened from here. It closed at 15,209 and started testing all of these lower supports, right? So this is a good short entry, right? Or at least to stop trying to buy the dip, right? So, you can try and figure out where the bottom is, but usually the best, it's not very prudent to try and bottom fish, right? Especially, I'm sure a lot of people figured that out here in this past January, because you can keep buying the dip and it can keep dipping, right? So, and I obviously got caught a couple of times trying to do that. You live and learn, but you can use Fibonacci extensions to see, okay, where might this thing turn around? You can use moving averages, right, like the 200 period moving average or major support levels. It finally found support down here in this 13,900 area and has been turning back up since, right? And Nasdaq is actually looking kind of bullish to me here, but let's get rid of this MACD. So here's another point of reference here is once it broke down from here and then it tested this trend line and came up, now it made another pivot, right? So we've got another trend line that we can draw. So we draw from this point to this point, and this gives us a point of reference, right? And this is a possible short, right? Now, the NQ did not give us a good short here. You could have tried to short this right here, and we just kind of closed right above it. And then the next day gapped above it, right? So this is, to me, this is a sign that we need to flip from being bearish. We need to flip from being sell the rip to buy the dip, right? So that's why I'm leaning more bullish on the Nasdaq right now, unless this 14,400 level breaks down, right? Because this move from this move to this move, that was a 50% retracement, and that held pretty well so far. So, you know, in my opinion, this is a setup for buying the dip for the Nasdaq until, you know, certain levels are broken, right? So let's head over to ES. Okay. So here's a trend line right here, right? See, so you have a point right here, and then another point right here, right? And then this gave you a beautiful bounce right here. I mean, this pinpoint entry at 45.75, I think. We actually took this at 45.75 in our group, and it hit 45.72 and bounced to 47.39. That's a hell of a bounce. So, and then again, here's a pivot point here, and then it made another one here. So now we've drawn this trend line here and actually turned this into a bearish channel. And that's another thing that you can do as well. You know, I'll show you how that's done in here real quick. So I'll just delete this. So, you know, it's a similar concept to drawing a trend line. So take this here, and then just take it to the next pivot point down, right? So that kind of gives you, again, nothing's perfect, but that sometimes gives you a point of reference. Like, you know, here, this might be a time to either exit your short position or try a long, and obviously that didn't work out. But sometimes, you know, more times than not, it does work out, right? This kind of gave you a little bit of a trim alert here, or, you know, maybe not buy up here because we're testing this upper area here. It didn't test it perfectly, but you see it did pull back quite a bit down to 44.40 area from 45.86, right? So, and then here was another trend line here. So here's another example of flipping from selling the rip or being bearish to being bullish, right? So we had a pivot point here, a pivot point here, and a pivot point here, okay? And then we've stayed below it until towards the end, and closed above it to test the bottom of this bearish channel. And you see what happened. We ran from 14.20 area up to 45.80 area, right? And then, like I said, actually on the 4-hour chart, it does test it perfectly. That's interesting. Okay, so tested it perfectly on the 4-hour chart, and then pulled back towards the middle of this channel. And you see support at the middle of these channels sometimes as well. And then it just kind of consolidated a little bit lower, and then it's been bouncing from here. And again, just like the Nasdaq, this is around the 50% retracement area. Okay, and then here's another bullish sign here for the ES. We are breaking above this bearish channel on a 4-hour basis. All right, so 4-hour candle close above that. So I'm actually thinking that we come up to test this 200 period moving average on the 4-hour chart, which is just shy of 4,600, which is, geez, man, which is just above this most recent high. Let's undo that. Oh, undo. There we go. Okay, let's actually draw one in real time for you guys. Let's see. Let me look at a name I haven't actually looked at or charted. USO. Okay. So here is USO, okay? So here we have, so here's a major pivot low here, right? So here's a trend line here, and then here's another one. You can actually take probably this one here. So I'm trying to get as many touches as I can. So you get 1, 2, 3, okay? So if price ever comes back down to here, this will give me a good buy signal. And I'm obviously not going to buy up here. Yeah, this chart looks overall bullish and the trend is up. But why would I buy up here when it's obviously getting overextended, right? And let's draw another trend line, and I'll show you why this would not be a good entry for longs. So here we have we're right at the top of this trend line here. So here's a pivot point here, here's a pivot point here, here's a pivot point here, and then here we are again here, right? So not the best area to take along. In fact, this is actually, to me, a good short setup, right? I mean, USO, this is actually pretty similar to crude oil futures. So, you know, it's kind of following a similar pattern here, right? So this is a short entry to me, right? It's coming up to test the top of this trend line, and then you can either take just a straight short position, or you can take puts, or even a call credit spread. You know, in positions like this, I actually like to take call credit spreads just in case price doesn't reject hard from it, and it just kind of like consolidates sideways or even grinds higher a little bit. Then you're still making money while price is kind of chopping sideways. So that's why I like call credit spreads. Let's see another one. Macys, yeah, that's one I never look at. Macys, okay. So this, yeah, okay, here we go. 1, 2, right there, perfect, okay. And then here's another trend line here. Look at that. So you actually got 3 touches here. So you got a touch here, here, and here. So that's a good trend line. And then one here, and then one here, right? So Macys is looking possibly like a good buy here. In fact, what was that? That was Macys call flow. Macys 27 strike calls bought 1,555 at the ask, 44 cents for this week's expiration. Nice. So where the hell did my trend lines go? There we go. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, actually this is possibly a good entry for long. This would have been a little bit better of an entry for long. But obviously with that call flow, you know, I think we do kind of run up to possibly test this 28 area. But this would have been a good long entry right here, you know, because if you were looking at Macys, you would have drawn a trend line from here to here, and then essentially you just wait, right? You know, you don't want to FOMO long all the way up here to 38, right? I mean, you can, but I don't like to chase stuff. You know, you just simply wait, you know, just like a sniper, just kind of wait for the perfect shot and then take it, right? And this, to me, this was it right here, right? This hit 22.57, and then the next week it jumped up to 27.93. So that's quite a move on Macys, right? So if you would have just taken a long at the test of this trend line, then you know, you would have made some money there. So, you know, it's pretty simple, guys. You know, this is, again, just one piece of the puzzle, one tool in the toolbox, but it's something that I use quite often. Right? I think it helps my trading a lot. So hopefully it helps you guys out. You know, one other thing I wanted to say, and I don't think I said it, but usually, like with the instance with the Nasdaq earlier, if you have the same trend line tested this many times, so you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, by that 6th time, and if you zoom in, it's probably more than that. But, you know, because here was test number 6, and then the dip below it, and then here was the other test, so that was the 7th time. Usually, the more times it's tested, the more likely it is to break. Right, and that's true with support and with resistance, right? The more times it's tested, the more likely it is to break. Okay, so something to keep in mind as well. You know, if you're looking, you know, let's go to Macys again. You know, this was only the 3rd time it tagged this trend line, right? So, you know, not super likely to break, right? So, you know, just another thing to keep in to take in consideration. Okay, but that's it for this review of trend lines, guys. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm over in Discord. If you are in our group, you can ask me in there. If you're not, I'll post a link in the description. You can head on over and ask us any trading related questions that you might have. But all right,